Animated Mishaps. Episode 1 The Great Emu War. In 1932, the Australian military went to war. It deployed soldiers, it deployed machine guns, and it lost 2 birds. These are emus. They are large, flightless Australian birds with small brains, long necks, and absolutely no respect for the military. This is the story of the Great Emu War. And no, it is not a metaphor. It was an actual military operation. To understand how this happened, we have to go back a little. World War I had ended in 1918. Australia had a lot of returning soldiers, and not a lot for them to do. So the government came up with a plan. It handed many of them farmland in Western Australia and said, "Congratulations, you are wheat farmers now." There was a small problem. A lot of this land was dry, remote, and not exactly built for farming. Then the Great Depression hit. Wheat prices collapsed, and the subsidies the farmers were promised never really arrived. So these former soldiers were already broke, already struggling, and already in a bad mood. Remember that part. And then, in late 1932, the emus arrived. Not a few emus, about 20,000 of them. Every year after breeding season, emus migrate from the dry interior toward the coast, looking for food and water. This time, along the way, they discovered something wonderful. Thousands of acres of cleared land with crops and water just sitting there. To the emus, this was a free buffet. To the farmers, this was a catastrophe. The emus ate the wheat, but that was not even the worst part. They trampled the crops, and they smashed straight through the fences as they barged in. And through those broken fences came rabbits, which ate whatever the emus had politely left behind. The farmers had had enough. They needed help. And here is where their background becomes very important. Many of these farmers were ex-soldiers. They knew their way around a machine gun. So they had an idea. They wrote to the Minister of Defense and basically asked, "Can we borrow some machine guns to deal with the birds?" The minister was Sir George Pierce, and incredibly, he said yes. He figured it would be good military training, good for the struggling farmers, and good publicity. That last one is going to age extremely badly. There were conditions. The farmers had to house and feed the soldiers and pay for the ammunition themselves. The military signed off. Operation Shoot the Birds. What could possibly go wrong? Leading the charge was Major G.P.W. Meredith of the Royal Australian Artillery. His army consisted of himself, 2 soldiers, and 2 Lewis machine guns. They brought 10,000 rounds of ammunition. They were confident this would be more than enough. The plan was simple. Find the emus, point the guns at the emus, the end. The emus had not been told about the plan. The operation was delayed almost immediately by rain, which scattered the emus across the countryside. When the weather finally cleared in early November, the war could begin. The men spotted a group of about 50 emus and tried to herd them into machine gun range. The emus, sensing the vibe, immediately split into small groups and ran in every direction. They opened fire from a distance. A handful of emus went down. Most of them just left. Round 2. They found a much bigger group near a dam, around 1,000 emus. They waited until the birds were close, and then they opened fire. After about a dozen birds, the gun jammed. The rest of the emus took the hint and ran. This would become a recurring theme. Gun works, gun jams, emus leave, repeat. It turned out emus are weirdly difficult to kill with a machine gun. For one thing, they are fast. They can run up to 50 kilometers an hour. For another, they are tough. A bird could take several hits and simply keep running. And the emus did not cluster up helpfully. They spread out and scattered the moment shooting started. Soldiers on the scene even claimed the flocks had leaders. A big bird would stand watch while the others fed, then warn them the second danger appeared. Almost like tactics. Major Meredith decided to get creative. He mounted a machine gun on the back of a truck. The truck could not keep up with the emus, and the ride was so bumpy nobody could aim. It was a disaster. By now, word of the Emu War had spread, and people found it hilarious. The press covered it gleefully. The army was being publicly outmaneuvered by flightless birds. The matter was even raised in Parliament, which is not where you want your bird war to end up. The Minister of Defense picked up a brand new nickname, the Minister for the Emu War. After about a week and a lot of wasted ammunition, the military quietly withdrew. They had fired thousands of rounds. The emus were, broadly speaking, fine. But the emus did not stop eating the crops. So the farmers asked for help again. The military returned a few days later for round two, and this time did slightly better. Now, how many emus were actually defeated? This is where it gets murky. The commander later claimed hundreds, possibly close to 1,000, were killed. But those numbers were disputed at the time and are still considered unreliable today. Nobody really agreed. What everyone did agree on was this: it was not a good use of the army. So Australia gave up on the military approach. Instead, they brought back the bounty system. Paying hunters for each bird turned out to be far more effective than 2 soldiers and a jam-prone machine gun. They also built long fences to keep the emus out, which mostly worked. In the years that followed, farmers asked the military for help again. The answer was a firm no. Today, emus are a protected native species in Australia. They are doing just fine. So when the history books tally it all up, there is really only one conclusion. In the Great Emu War, the emus were never defeated. Thanks for watching Animated Mishaps. If you enjoyed this, subscribe and follow at Animated Mishaps for more true stories that sound completely made up. See you next time.